I'm Ben Ryman, and this is Behavior Speak.
In the monolingual condition, all participants acquired the skills faster when it was just one single language, but essentially they acquire the skill fastest in the monolingual condition. But within the bilingual condition, you'll see that here, it took them a lot longer to acquire the skills within the bilingual. But looking at across the languages within the bilingual, their language dominance at home impacted what their skills were.
Behavior analysts aren't receiving the education necessary to implement culturally responsive behaviors within everyday practice.
Welcome back to Behavior Speak. This episode is a special compilation I recorded at the 2025 Ontario Association for Behaviour Analysis Conference, where I had the chance to sit down with 4 outstanding poster presenters whose work represents the next wave of thinking in our field. From mapping service access across Ontario using statistical modeling, to advancing cultural responsiveness in ABA, to examining bilingual instruction and innovative approaches to teaching safety skills. These conversations highlight how emerging scholars are pushing behavior analysis forward in meaningful, practical ways. This episode is presented by our founding university partner, Western University Faculty of Education, home to the Doctor of Education in the field of applied behavior analysis, a program designed for experienced professionals ready to lead in clinical practice, research, and systems-level change. I'm excited for you to hear these conversations. Let's get into it. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Qiduo from Western University, and now I'm the first year for the master degree in the Western University. And actually, we 3 people are from the statistics faculty, and this summer, we collaborate with the education faculty, try to study this topic. You can see the mapping the registered behavior analysis access in the Ontario. So we're trying to use the statistic tools and aspect to see these problems, these studies.
That's amazing. Okay, and so your background is math, statistics. That's sort of your role in this study. Okay, amazing. Okay, so tell me, what was sort of the goal here?
So the goal here is trying to see, we're trying to do some data visualizations. We know there are some ABA providers in the Ontario, but we want to know where the exact workplace, they are willing to provide the service, or which area they have the higher probability to let them give the service.
Right. So we're trying to kind of see essentially where all the behavior analysts are, and I suppose at the same time we're finding out where they're not.
You can see from this one, from this map,
Wow.
It's very significant. You can see a lot of providers here, right? But for the upper side of the Ontario, you can see that the black dots is very small, because the black dot represent the APA providers numbers in this forward, the FSA, this, how can I pronounce it? Forward sortation area. So you can see that this part, we have a lot of the service provider, but the upper side, very sad, it's just very few.
Yeah, there's hardly any in this area. And were you just doing Greater Toronto, London, and Ottawa?
Oh yeah, actually this is the whole whole map for the Ontario, but we picked 3 very special ones: Ottawa, the capital city; London, where the Western University is located, and because you talk about the Ontario, you cannot avoid the Greater Toronto area.
So obviously very sparse. So would a dot like this indicate that there's one behavior analyst there, or what are we looking at?
Yeah, it's kind of very few, only one. I think it's not more than 2, 0 or 1. Yeah.
And I think just for folks, because we'll have a shot of the poster for folks to see when we publish this. Just for folks that might not be from Ontario, can you give us an idea of like how big of a space this is? Because just to give an idea of how far away these distances are and sort of, how much space there is sort of between Greater Toronto and down here, that kind of thing. So what's sort of the area here of Toronto, of Ontario?
So actually you can see that it's divided by because I'm not Canadian, so
Of course. No, fair enough. So I think we're looking at sort of upper Great Lakes here and really hundreds and hundreds of kilometers distance sort of between these spaces. So you've got data on where on the map the behavior analysts are. What were some of the other sort of socioeconomic indicators you were looking at?
So for this master part, we got the data from this College of Psychologists and Behaviour Analysts of Ontario, and thanks to them to share their providers' workplace with us. And another, we got very important data from the 2021 Canada Census data, and we tried to abstract something like the median income, the population in 2021, and of course, we talk about this, we talk about the education, the bachelor degree rate in this area. And also very interesting since we create a new variable called distress index. Actually, they are made by 4 social factors. It's like in this area, the single parents family rate, the people even didn't finish the high school education, the people which very low income, like under the poverty line, and also I think it's about. I think also it has another one is also related to these things. So it shows that if this number is higher, it's kind of like have a higher stress in life.
And so tell me a little bit about some of the results. What kind of information did you learn from this?
Okay, so at the beginning, when I heard about this study, I was think about, of course, like the large cities, kind of like the Toronto and Ottawa. I think supposed to have more service provider, but that is our hypothesis. We need the evidence, right? We need the data to provide the evidence. So this is our evidence. You can see that in the South Ontario, we have most providers concentrated in these 2 cities. And the upper part, the northern and the remote areas, we can see it's very sad. We have few, and you can see almost no service providers here. So when we after this, we also do the Pearson correlationships. That is a statistical tool. It's kind of like try to figure out the linear relationship between these social economic factors. Like, that means like higher income, more service providers. So the results tell us the linear relationship is very weak. So it's not like a very simple model to explain. So we can do something like, okay, this place has higher medium income, so it's supposed to have a larger size of the service provider. No, it's kind of like a very complex factor. So it includes something like geography, professional mobility, and some infrastructures and cheap service exercise. So I would say it's a more complex problem or the research than I think.
So what can we do with this data? What does this tell us that we might need to do more of or less of?
So actually, I just talked about some people here, and they said, okay, maybe for the policies, the people who make the policy, maybe next step is trying to bring some more service provider to the upper part of the Ontario, because we see a few people here. That's sad. And for our what can we do as a statistics student? We can try to maybe fit the model, trying to detect it. Where is the demand of the service provider? Because even nowadays, there are more and more people trying to do join this profession. But you can still see there's a lot of family, they still facing the difficulty in waiting for the service provider. And even we look at the what is called the Ontario Autism Program, there's still a lot of family waiting for the funding, waiting for the help. So I think for the statistic students, we can do is trying to figure out where is the shortage of our service. We can try to find a gap between the supplier and the family with the autism kids. Yeah.
So is this project continuing then? Are you looking to do other things here?
So now at this stage it's very, very beginning. You can see because we just finished to mapping them, and the next step is we are trying to access to the real data for the Ontario, and we are trying to fit in some models like statistic model, and we can see which factors can contribute to our studies.
This is really cool. I'm really interested to just kind of see where this goes. I think this is really important. I love that Western and Dr. Neil are including, folks from the data world to kind of help us analyze data. Behavior analysts are all about data, but I don't think we know how to do things with data like you folks.
Because I was so happy when I first heard that we're going to collaborate with the education faculty, because even we studied the data science or the statistics for several years, but we trying to find a way, like how can we contribute to this society? How can we to use our science, technology, or knowledge, trying to change some situations and make this society better.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, the idea that you can bring your math and statistics, and use it to do good.
Yeah, and we also talk about maybe in the future we use the algorithm, try to can we make the waiting time less, trying to figure out which family they need the help. They are they really need the help. We have to short the time they wait to help them get access to the service. Yeah.
I love that. Really cool study. Thanks for chatting with me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome. All right, that was wicked. What's your name?
Erin Williamson.
And you're at Western, student at Western. So tell me a little bit about, before we get into the poster, tell me about why you decided to get into the program at Western.
So I completed my bachelor's at Durham College, and I wanted to further my study in ABA. I didn't know that's what I wanted to go into at the start of my bachelor's, but I had a lot of great professors who were mentors to me and encouraged me to go further with my study.
Was one of your mentors Nahal Siam? Just to give a shout out to her, what was it like working with Nahal?
Nahal was my professor for 2 courses and my field placement, and she was incredibly supportive all through. The field placement was my first experience with her, and then older adults, and then in my final semester in reflective practice, so more ethics, discussions about, what's going on right now in ABA and different ethical dilemmas.
Amazing. And so you're in your master's program now. Are you also working in the field?
Yes.
So tell me, what kind of work are you doing?
So right now I'm a supervised instructor therapist at a local ABA clinic.
And, okay, so tell me a little bit about this poster. What's going on?
So this culture this poster, I was looking at the word culture, really talks about what's going on in the literature as it pertains to cultural responsiveness in ABA. So, what has been done, what works, what doesn't, what's being talked about, and what can we focus on for the future.
So I think it's amazing that we're actually at a point where one can do a literature review on cultural responsiveness and behavior analysis, because we haven't been talking about this for very long.
No, and especially in the past, I'd say 9-10 years, it's really come a long way, and there's a lot more articles. Growing, if we talked about this, 5-10 years ago, the research would not be as deep and as meaningful as it is right now.
Okay, so tell me, I guess first off, why do this review?
For me, my journey in cultural responsiveness started with an FLCA learning abroad in my bachelor's program. Oh, yeah. We did a pre and post trip workshop in cultural responsiveness and cultural humility. And that was, I think it was Dr. Sonia Levy from Impact Village.
Another guest on the podcast.
Wonderful, incredible. And those really stuck with me, as well as my experiences in Costa Rica and the differences in disability and perception and how those services run.
Yeah, right on. Yeah. Okay, and so tell me, what did you do to sort of conduct this review?
So conducting this, we went through a couple of different library databases. We were looking at diversity, equity, culture, culturally, really anything that had to do with culture, and to find out what is currently being done in terms of addressing it. Mm-hmm. And we also only used English studies.
Maybe for starters, how many studies were there?
Oh, that's a lot.
You figure. Was there quite a few?
There was quite a few.
Did you sort of narrow it down? Did you have sort of a criteria that you kind of narrowed things down to, or? We
looked more so based on theme and what were the common themes that were kind of poking up at us from the literature, and we found a couple of different ones.
So let's talk a bit about the themes. What'd you find out?
So first we start off with supervision and graduate training. So we look and we a lot has been written about the fact that more culturally responsive education should be provided in terms of DEI principles, in terms of practicums, and ongoing supervision within that field. It's been reported that behavior analysts aren't receiving the education necessary to implement culturally responsive behaviors within everyday practice.
Okay, so supervision and training, what else?
Self-assessment and reflection. So reflecting on our own upbringing, our own cultural values, a cultural identity map was suggested. And really evaluating our own biases, because bias is something that we can fix, especially when it might be impacting our clients.
I see you have behavioral skills training here. Tell me about how that sort of fits into the whole cultural responsiveness.
Yeah, behavioral skills training has been used to teach more compassionate care skills, body language, eye contact, things that you would be using while working with culturally diverse families and clients. And it's been one of the empirically founded studies within the topic, while there haven't been a lot. It has been a lot of framework and a lot of proposals and a lot of, this group says, analysts say, a lot of hypotheticals right now.
And then I also see cultural adaptations of materials and assessments, cultural responsiveness for specific populations. So tell me a little bit about sort of this last piece, the sort of trends in future research. What kinds of patterns were you seeing, and sort of how do you put all this together?
Yeah, so really looking at different cultures and seeing what can be done to generalize these, again, materials assessments for these diverse populations. We know that diverse populations are more affected by materials not being individualized, sure. And to be more individualized to the client would be more effective. We know that the entire purpose of ABA is to support individuals across diverse communities and life contexts. And so when we don't have specific materials or adaptations to materials, that can hinder progress and ultimately impact the goals and treatment received.
Okay, amazing. And so in the discussion, you talked probably a lot about what you've already just mentioned. What was sort of kind of recommendations for future research?
I think looking more into behavioral skills training and how that can be applied in other contexts. What can we do in terms of applying self-assessment and reflection in things that have already been done into new contexts for new populations in terms of different culture and really incorporating the feedback that we already do have from different cultures into areas for research.
And what impact has sort of reading all these studies, learning about sort of cultural responsiveness and whatnot, what impact has that had on the work you're doing?
I mean, I work in a very culturally diverse area. A lot of my clients come from different backgrounds, from each other, from myself, and really just noticing it and saying, hey, maybe we could do this. Maybe we could look at different ways to highlight culture, thinking of different ways that it can be brought into treatment.
Amazing. Now, usually when I see a literature review being done and it's by a student sort of not totally done their program, it's usually leading up to something else. Is there another study that you're going to be doing in this area? Is there a follow-up? Are you going to be doing more work around cultural responsiveness?
Not from what I know yet. Yeah, really this stemmed from the assignment, and Olivia has been so incredible in terms of supporting me and also working with me through this. A lot of our research kind of went along the same lines of the same sources. Olivia is doing her PhD right now, and this is her area of focus as well.
Got it.
So maybe keep an eye on her.
Maybe she's the one that's going to do something next with a lit review. Copy that. Yeah, right on. Erin, thanks for coming on. It was cool.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, everybody. If you're a BCBA or master's level behavior analyst thinking about doctoral training, here's a quick heads up. The application deadline has been extended for the Doctor of Education in the field of Applied Behavior Analysis at Western University's Faculty of Education. You now have until April 12th, 2026 to apply for fall intake. This fully online 3-year cohort program is designed for working professionals with potential for a BCBA-D pathway with a qualifying dissertation in practice. If you're ready to step into leadership, academia, consulting, or policy, check the links in the show notes to learn more and apply, or email edrecruit@uwo.ca with questions. Welcome to Behavior Speak. Charlotte, tell me about yourself. Who are you? Where do you go? What do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Charlotte. I'm currently in my 4th year of my Honors Bachelor of Behavioral Psychology at St. Lawrence College. This is a project that I did during my 3rd year placement. I'm currently in my 4th year completing a thesis project on a totally different topic, but this poster I can tell you about right now. So this is, I use shaping and prompting to teach a Stop and Come Here program to an 8-year-old student. So the student had a diagnosis of ASD as well as a global developmental delay. They were in a 3rd grade classroom and received constant support from an AA at an intensive level. They only attended partial days of school, and they also, English was the second language. They did show a skill deficit in the Stop and Come Here realm. They didn't properly respond, and so that was a very big safety hazard, a very big safety concern. And so we wanted to increase the proper response to Stop and Come Here, and to see if the program was effective, but also to improve their safety skills. So this was a single subject A/B design. I used ABC recording and percentage of opportunities of the target behavior as the measures. For the assessment, the EA completed an FAI and a QABF. I did a client file review as well as a paired stimulus preference assessment. The baseline results did determine that there was a skill deficit in the Stop and Come Here behaviors, and so we wanted to teach Stop and Come Here behaviors. We did this in multiple steps. The first one, the first objective or the first goal within the program, there's 2, was to teach stop. And then once that was achieved, then the come here behavior. So first, to teach the stop behavior, let's say I'm the implementer, I would have the client stand next to me, we would walk, and I would say stop, and I would use my arm as a gestural prompt, as well as the verbal prompt of stop. Once the client could stop without touching my arm 3 consecutive times across 2 different staff members, they would move on to the next step, which was having them stop beside me, just using the verbal prompt, no gestural prompt, no arm. And then once that was accomplished, accomplished moving on to stop and come here from 1 foot away. So this was done using first setting the environment, so making sure there was 8 feet for the client so that we could implement the intervention always. This was normally done in the school hallway, walking to class or from class to go to the bus. I presented this social story, which first it says, okay, we're going to practice stopping, come here, and then we're going to go to class, or then we're going to go to the bus. And then I proceeded to show the 2 reinforcement options. The client would pick which one they would like, and I'd say, okay, walk with me, and then we would start the trials. I used shaping, shaping used to build higher approximations of the behavior, as well as least to most prompting to aid in the correct response of stop and come here. If they did respond to stop and come here, verbal reinforcement given right away, as well as access to the preferred item, which was either chips or gummies, and edible reinforcement, which I know sometimes people have mixed opinions about that, but given the type of intervention, we wanted to use that because the client could have a bite of the chip and then we could continue on, versus if we used a preferred item, maybe like bubbles or iPad, it just wasn't realistic in the hallway to stop the intervention, right? We wanted to just have that snack and let's go with the next trial. Yeah, so that's what we used. And then least to most prompting was used if the elopement behavior occurred. Now during the baseline, there was only about 10% of the time the student engaged in the stop behavior, but in the intervention we saw it in, I can't remember the exact number, but it went up into the 30%. So there was a large behavior change, and it did fall within the PEM line, showing that the program was effective in teaching the stop behavior. For the come here behavior, what was unfortunate was only 1 session we were able to implement with the come here behavior. But in that 1 session, there was, again, can't remember the exact number, but it was in the 50th percentile there, 50th percent of the come here behavior. So that was great. They didn't engage in it during the baseline, so that meant that there was no behavior change that could be recorded. However, the intervention procedures were effective in teaching the stop and come here program. It was only 7-week placement, so that was a limitation in terms of why I was only able to achieve all the way to just step 3. Also, there was a little bit of rigidity in the client schedule, and so I was only able to implement it walking to and from class. I wasn't able to get 3 days of stable baseline, unfortunately. So that's a limitation, as well as it was a single case design. So generalizability is potentially limited by that. I did recommend that they would continue the program until all of the objectives were met and mastery criteria was achieved. Gotcha. I did also recommend errorless teaching to be used when a new step was being taught, and that 2 staff were used throughout the entire intervention until all the goals were met and the edible reinforcer was faded.
Right on. Cool study. Well done. Yeah. So tell me now, your thesis is something different. So what's your thesis?
Yeah. So the full title of my thesis, and sorry if I stutter because I'm thinking of it as I'm saying it, but I am exploring the effects of a multi-component caregiver support group on the quality of life of caregiving partners to spouses with dementia.
What?
Yeah.
That's super awesome.
Yeah, totally a different thing, but I'm really excited. And so, I've been able to collect all the results, and now I am looking at analyzing everything and getting that done. So that placement is a 14-week placement, so a little bit longer, have more time. But this will be the first thesis I've ever wrote. Amazing. Totally different than the behavior support program. Yeah.
That's going to be a cool study. Charlotte, can we have you back on the podcast to talk about it when it's all done?
I believe I should be able to. I have to check with my profs, but I should be able to. Yeah.
You will be.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Okay, let's start by having you tell me your name.
My name's Kaysia Nedjelski.
Okay, perfect. Welcome to Behaviour Speak, Kaysia.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I am from Sudbury, Ontario. I am a newly certified behavior analyst. I graduated from the Chicago School in 2024, and this is my master's thesis that I am presenting here today at ONTABA.
Okay, so what was your thesis? What's the subject here?
So basically, I wanted to see if there was going to be a difference between teaching language, so Tact instructions, in a single language format versus a bilingual format.
Okay. And why did you want to do this?
So I'm actually bilingual myself, and I work with a lot of bilingual populations, specifically English and French, because I'm from Sudbury. So we've got quite a diverse language pool and clients there. Okay. So I was really interested in seeing how does bilingualism affect language development. I actually had one participant where the family was kind of going back and forth whether they should, go the French route or the English route, because he was enrolled in French and he wasn't really acquiring many skills. And so following the study, they actually decided to switch him to an English school once they saw the results.
Amazing. Okay, so Well, what did the study look like? What did you do?
So basically, going right into the methods, I had quite an extensive experimental process to it, but skipping all the pre-tests and the baselines and whatnot,
Sure.
the training component of it was basically using an adapted alternating treatment design where they were exposed to 3 different sets of picture cards.
Yeah.
So set A was English only, and then
Okay.
set B was bilingual.
Okay.
So set A, they were exposed to 18 trials of me going back and forth through different picture cards, English only.
All right.
And then within the bilingual format, it was back and forth like English, French. So 3 picture cards. The first half of them were blue backgrounds if it was in English, and then yellow background if it was in French. So I'd show I'd say, what is this? Or c'est quoi? And I'd show them in an alternating format across the language to see like how they were going to acquire the skills. And so that was kind of what the training component looked like, of just alternating across the languages.
I think it might be helpful just to tell me a little bit about the subjects, because it might
Yeah,
help
absolutely.
get an idea of sort of...
So I had 3 children with autism participate in the study. They were all pretty early learners between the ages of 5 to 8. And the study took place either in the participants' homes or at a ABA agency in Sudbury.
Yes.
And so my independent variable that I was looking at was the language of instruction, so either English only, so the monolingual, or bilingual, which was English and French.
And so were all these kids from like bilingual homes?
Yes. So that was part of the criteria to be included in the study, is they had to be bilingual in some capacity within French and English. Getting into the results section, you'll see how interesting this part is.
Okay.
But essentially, prior to the study starting, I did a questionnaire with caregivers to see what was the child's language dominance, seeing what their proficiency was, what the exposure was, so what a parent speak to their child in, what does the child initiate conversations in, what type of TV do they watch, like what language is it in, just to seeing the overall picture of like what their strengths were. And so going through the study and then seeing what the results were, pretty much in the monolingual condition, all participants acquired the skills faster when it was just one single language.
Okay.
Now for my study, it was just English only. So I'd be curious to see like in the future if I did monolingual, but it was English and French, of how that may have an effect. But essentially, they acquire the skill fastest in the monolingual condition. But within the bilingual condition, you'll see that here, and you know, it took them a lot longer to acquire the skills within the bilingual. But looking at across the languages within the bilingual, their language dominance at home impacted what their skills were. So for Noah, for example, his strength was in French. And so French, the correct Tact responses were a lot higher than they were in English.
Okay.
But then Liam had pretty much equal exposure. So like parents said that he spoke in French and heard English and whatnot. So equal exposure for him. And so his responding was pretty much equal across the bilingual condition. And then Kai, his strengths were in English. And so his skills acquired faster in English within the bilingual condition.
Wow.
So it really matched what their dominant language was.
And did you find any change in the non-dominant language by doing
So, I mean, they did acquire skills regardless, going through the training, but it took them a lot longer to get through the skill acquisition, and the acquisition of the non-dominant language wasn't as significant as it was for their dominant language. As you can see here, like it's much lower in in English for Noah than it was in French. And
now I see you've got like really good social validity ratings, but I'm curious about sort of, you know, it was all in English, and English did better.
Yeah.
Would some of these families have wanted the French to do better? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So one family, like I mentioned in the beginning, that they ended up switching in school. So they were really keen on, you know, maintaining the French because that was a big part of their culture.
Yep.
But ultimately, one side of the family was that they had more exposure to was all English. And so, you know, the parents were a little bit disappointed by the fact that, you know, French wasn't, you know, the proficient one. But it really just reaffirmed for them, like, you know, we have to eliminate the one barrier for a child of, you know, language is already at a halt for him. That removing that extra barrier of having the language that he's not dominant in would help him acquire more skills, which he has now to date.
So it would be interesting if you just did it all in French.
Yes, to see like how, like if it was in French only, if that would have the same effect. That's definitely something that I'd love to look into in future research, and also incorporating like child's preference. Like if they can make a preference, like do you prefer English or do you prefer French? Because you know that could be a big variable there too. You know, because I'm bilingual myself, and it's like I speak both, but you know I prefer speaking English sometimes. But it's nice to be able to communicate with a broader group of people because I have access to both.
Curious for you, are you bilingual because you like took French immersion, or you?
No, so I grew up. So my family was English, but my grandparents spoke French, and so my parents put me in a French school my whole life. So I went to French school from like the get-go all the way to first year of university, and then kind of like took over English from there. But English was always my preferred.
Yeah. So any other kind of things you kind of found out here?
That was really the big piece. Like when we look at generalization and listener skills as well, because those were two other components that I looked at, because this was a replication study, and so I added the generalization piece. For all the participants, they acquired, like I said, the monolingual instruction faster. So there was fewer trials of mastery, and then also there was stronger generalization within the monolingual condition than the bilingual condition. But also looking at participant skills, listener skills did emerge without direct training. And again, stronger within the monolingual condition versus the bilingual one.
Oh, that's really cool study. So you graduated now?
Yes.
What do you do for work?
So right now I'm transitioning to a behavior analyst role, and I'll be hoping to start more of a independent contractor type role in the new year. But on my day-to-day, I work with children with autism doing direct ABA therapy. And so that's kind of what
And sort of this age group?
Yeah, so I work with early learners. Most of my clients are all under the age of 10 right now.
And do you work with French families doing the work in French?
Yeah, so most of my clients right now are French. So like all the services are delivered in French, but I do have some English clients. And then depending on the family, sometimes it's like we'll speak in French and English at the same time. So like it's more bilingual format, but as you could see from the results, we try to focus on one language specifically when delivering services.
And does a bit of a broad question, but just thinking about the other person I just interviewed, what are sort of some considerations for kind of culturally responsive care with French families?
Yeah. So I think like ultimately, you know, if you want your child to learn both languages or learn your home language, like I think that's an important piece that we have to consider. I think it's just also important to remember that even though if you want to go that route, it might just take longer, you know? So whether that be continuing with bilingual instruction and teaching across both formats from the get-go, or, you know, starting with the dominant language first, and once they've built some of that language repertoire, then adding in a second language, like I think that may be more beneficial. But again, I think that's something that research should kind of look into, because it's quite limited in this sector right now. But I think this would have a huge impact on families deciding like what type of educational route to go for the child, because it really has a huge impact.
Right on, Kaysia. Thanks for hanging back. This was awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate you for interviewing me today. It was really great. Thank you.
Wicked. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok, and subscribe to our YouTube page at Behaviour Speak. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.